Yesterday, I was basking in the joy of being his mate. Today, I'm a prisoner. He didn't give me any explanation, just ordered me to be thrown into the dungeon. Let's officially listen to today's werewolf story. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support. Chapter 1: He Family Meeting Adelina SPOV. Today is a very important day for our pack. I would appreciate it if all my children were beside me when Alpha Maximus Drive AKO arrives. I want us to make a good impression. We need to win his alliance not only because he is one of the most powerful alphas in the world, but also because he is the strongest contender for the royal throne. Jake, you'll join me during the meeting, while the girls will handle the reception accommodation for the alpha. Our father informed us during breakfast. Every morning, we have breakfast together, a time when our father outlines our daily schedule and chores. But father, I want to be at the meeting too, I interjected. I'd like to present our economic projects and share my ideas. Don't worry, my sunshine, he replied warmly. Jake will handle everything. You know how alphas feel about women in politics. We don't want to provoke or irritate him, do we? I suppose you're right. I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize our pack's future, I reassured him, though it stung. As much as I hated it, I understood his reasoning. Wolf society is deeply patriarchal. Women are restricted to roles as gazer or lunas, breeding and managing domestic affairs. Nothing more. Fortunately, my father doesn't share these outdated views, but our pack is too small and financially fragile to challenge societal norms. Today, father is particularly anxious. This meeting isn't just about announcing Jake as the new alpha. He hopes to secure Maximus Draco's alliance to claim the Friel and border in our northern territory. Unfortunately, Alpha Bradley of our neighboring pack also desires this land, and his pack is larger and more powerful. I pray Alpha Maximus understands that this land isn't just ancient for us, it's our survival. Since our mother's death, father has struggled to lead effectively. Jake and I were too young to help, so his beta, Ben, stepped in to manage the pack. While Ben was excellent at defense, he was terrible with economics. Under his management, our businesses declined, and many pack members fell into poverty. Now that Jake is 24, he'll officially take over as alpha tomorrow, and I'll do everything I can to help him bring prosperity back to our land. Ben's son, Jacob, is set to become our new beta and possibly my mate, if I don't find mine. Jacob's mate, Elisa, died 6 years ago. She was beautiful and kind-hearted, though we weren't close friends. Her loss devastated us all, especially Jacob. Jacob and I grew up together and share a strong bond, though not as strong as the one he shared with his mate. When Jacob and Elisa were revealed as mates, I was happy for them but also a bit envious, longing for the day I'd find my mate. I yearn for the connection everyone talks about, the sparks, the bond. I pray the moon goddess will bless me with a mate someday. The time has come. HES already here. Why are you still in your tracksuit? Adelina, Stella scolded me, barging into my room as usual. How does she always sneak in unnoticed? Because you're always in your own world. My beautiful sister, she teased. Did I say that aloud? I wondered. No, you didn't. My wolf replied in my head, huh? I blinked in confusion. Stop daydreaming. Adelina, Alpha Maximus Drive AKO is here. Get ready, Stella said impatiently. 10 seconds, and it'll be done. 10 seconds. Are you mad? I've been preparing all morning. I'm so excited. I really hope HES the one. Puzzled. My mate, HES 30 and still single. Rumor has it HES searching for his fated mate. Practically bouncing with excitement. What makes you think the future king of all werewolves will be your mate? His mate will likely be a princess or someone from a royal family. Besides, even if he were your mate, IVE had HES selfish. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilgan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, and harsh. Why would you want a mate like that? Oh, Adelina, can't you see? His mate will be the future queen, living in a palace, wearing luxurious dresses and jewels, enjoying a life of comfort. Who cares if H is a jerk? Sorry, Stella, but that doesn't appeal to me. I'd rather be with someone kind and ordinary than endure life with Alpha Maximus. No matter his riches. Whatever. Sis, you've always been narrow-minded. People can change. You know. Maybe he'll treat his mate differently with love and sweetness. People don't change that easily. Stella. And a life like that always watched, criticized, and in danger isn't worth all the riches in the world. You're impossible. She huffed, storming out of my room. Maximus's POV. At last, we arrived at this insignificant Pact, our final stop before returning home. The tour has been exhausting, but I've established my dominance across the werewolf community. They now know to challenge me for the throne. This pack holds little interest for me. It's small and financially struggling. However, their invitation to witness the presentation of their future alpha shows respect, which I won't overlook. Allies, even small ones, can be valuable. Yet, since entering this territory, I've felt strange, restless, eager, and uneasy. My wolf, AKO, shares my agitation. It's not fear but something more. An anticipation I can't explain. Something tells me this visit will change my life forever. Whatever fate has in store. I'm ready to face it. As always. Chapter to the acquaintance. Maximus POV. I am very glad that the future king will attend my son's coronation. It's truly an honor. Alpha Maximus. Your reputation precedes you. You are one of the most remarkable and promising alphas of your generation. Your father was incredibly powerful, but I truly believe you surpass him. Thank you, I replied in a flat tone. Everywhere I go, I hear the same compliments. I'm sick of it. Taking advantage of your presence here. I'd also like to discuss a very important matter with you if you have the time. Your Majesty. The Alpha of the Crescent Moon Pact continued, his tone careful yet eager. I'm so tired of this ex-alpha attitude. Why can't they just say what's on their mind without all the flowery praise and finality? Little does he know that flattery gains nothing from me. My wolf, AKO, is restless and ominous. He shifts uneasily, his unease making my skin prickle. Something about this pack doesn't sit right with him. If they've done anything foolish, I'll make them pay dearly for it. As the alpha rambled on, a delightful scent hit me. Jasmine and gardenia. The most captivating aroma my senses have ever encountered. My wolf surged forward, taking control as my eyes scanned the room. And then I saw her. She stood at the door, her teton poised, about to enter. Long brown hair, hazel almond eyes, and a lean, curvaceous figure. She was the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen. She wore a long black pencil skirt and a crisp white shirt, complemented by black patent leather high heels. Magnificent, AKO purred, his voice filled with longing. At first glance, her petite frame and thick features made me think she might be a low-ranking wolf, but the way she carried herself, with confidence and poise, contradicted that assumption. Her attire was far too polished for an Omega. Perhaps they dressed her up for my visit. She might be someone's mistress, meant to curry favor. The thought alone made AKO growl in disapproval. She's my mate. No one can lay a hand on her. Don't even think about calling her someone's mistress. Calm down. AKO. I snapped, trying to suppress his excitement. You can't seriously believe a low-ranking Omega could be my mate. Watch your words. AKO growled furiously. She's mine. I want to mock her here and now. Hold your horses. I countered. You're jumping to conclusions. Besides, I already have a Lunagina. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. AKO scoffed. She's not her Luna. She's just a random fling. And frankly, just too fake and far too ugly for our taste. Speak for yourself. I muttered. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. The Alpha's voice dragged me back into the conversation. So, Alpha Maximus, what do you think of our proposal? Do you see its potential, huh? I blinked, realizing everything. Apologies, but this trip has exhausted me. I suggest we take a 30-minute break if there are no objections. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Your Majesty, please forgive us for not allowing you sufficient rest. I'll have the Omgazer bring refreshments immediately. The Alpha responded obsequiously. Go talk to her. Dive KO urged. I want to know her name. I'll talk to her but not for your reasons, I said firmly. Oh, the infamous Alpha Maximus doesn't admit to sharing anything, not even curiosity, with his wolf. Drive Ake, they teased. Cut it out. Drive AKO. I'm already fed up with this sycophant calling me Majesty every 2 minutes. Don't add to it. Okay. I'll stop. Drive AKO said, his tone laced with mischief. But you still haven't told me why you want to talk to her. Just curious. That's all, I replied, keeping my tone measured and indifferent. But it wasn't entirely true. There was something about her presence that unsettled me in ways I didn't want to acknowledge, not even to myself. You, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Draco's voiced skepticism. You're never curious. Maximus. I turned my attention back to the girl. Drive AKO was right about one thing: she was stunning. She stood by the buffet, directing the Omgazer, completely ignoring my presence. I cleared my throat, expecting her attention, but she didn't even glance my way. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My tone sharper now. Dive AKO chuckled. She's confident. I like that. Or arrogant, I retorted. Probably because she's sleeping with someone like Jake or Richard. That would explain her inflated ego. My mate would never. Drive AKO snapped. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She's not your mate yet. Dive AKO. And what do you expect? For her to wait for us. And touch. All this time. Another word. And you'll mark her right now. Drive AKO threatened. You'll do nothing, I said coldly. Sit down like a good puppy. And wait. I am not a puppy. You are whatever I say you are. Now, do we have a deal? Fine. Drive AKO grumbled reluctantly. He could be infuriatingly stubborn, but he knew better than to challenge me outright. The girl finally turned to face me, her head held high. Alpha Maximus? How can I help you? Not avoiding eye contact. Not something an Omega would do. Now I was genuinely curious. I wonder if I could have a fresh drink. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'll send an Omega right away, she replied briskly, turning to leave. I grabbed her arm, forcing her to face me. Is it so offensive to serve me yourself? Of course not. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's simply not my responsibility, she said calmly. And what? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Are your responsibilities? Many, she replied curtly. Who are you? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Adelina. Her voice steady. Alpha Richard's daughter and this Pact's financial advisor. I blinked, taken aback. Financial advisor? A woman? Is this a joke? No joke. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And with your permission, I'll see to your drink. She turned and walked away. She's got guts. Drive AKO commented. Amused. She's insufferable. I muttered. But I watched her leave. I cowed and denied the truth. She was different, and that was unsettling. Why didn't she recognize us? Drive AKO interjected, his usual impatience clear. Because you always forget. I replied, my tone clipped. When we're outside the pack. My scent is masked by the magic potion that which Sonia concocted for me. Doesn't matter. I want her. Drive AKO growled. You have to reveal yourself and take her with us. She's the Alpha's daughter, not an Omega like you thought. A daughter of a small, financially ruined pack. I countered coldly. What benefit is there in that for me? Her attitude alone should disqualify her. Have you completely lost your mind? Drive AKO. If you ever had one. That is. And let me remind you we already have Gina. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Draco's disdain was palpable. That bimbo is not good enough to be Luna. She's a pathetic excuse for a mate. And you know it. Our mate, our true mate, is right here. If you refuse to reveal yourself to her, don't expect me to help you in battles or skirmishes anymore. And with that, Drive AKO sped our connection, leading me in silence. He didn't bluff ever. Truth to be told, if I wanted to claim the throne and secure my position, I needed Drive AKO on my side. Without him, I wouldn't stand a chance against my enemies. Damn it. Why does he have to be so stubborn? Why must he complicate everything? My gaze swept the room until I spotted Alpha Richard and his son, Jake, talking and drinking in the corner. With deliberate steps, I approached them. The moment they saw me, they stopped mid-conversation, their faces instantly paling as they bowed low. Clutching their glasses, I let my eyes settle on them, cold and calculating. Before I began, Alpha Richard, Jake, I need to speak with you immediately. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My tone curt. Of course. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. We're at your service. Richard replied, his voice dripping with false deference. Not here. Somewhere private. This matter requires discretion, I commanded. You worry us? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What has happened? Richard asked nervously. Call your daughter. She needs to be part of this conversation, I said firmly. Which one? I think her name is Adelina, I said inferently. My daughter Adelina. Richard stammered. Yes. Is that a problem? I asked sharply. And no, not at all. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'll have her brought immediately. Bowing awkwardly, within 10 minutes, we were all gathered in Richard's office. The room was small and suffocating, but the intoxicating scent of jasmine and gardenia filled the space, making it oddly bearable. Adelina stood in the corner, her head lowered, avoiding my gaze. She was far more tolerable, like this quiet and unassuming. The arrogance she had shown earlier seemed to vanish in this confined space. Good. Alpha Maximus. Richard began cautiously. May I ask why we've gathered here? I met his gaze with cold authority. As you all know, I've spent nearly 2 decades searching for my mate without success. Today? That's a chance. Richard's face lit up with disbelief and delight. Truly. Congratulations. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. This is incredible news. What an honor that your mate is from our pack. Enough, I interrupted. His sycophantic rambling grated on my nerves. Richard froze, his mouth half open. My mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Turning my gaze toward Adelina. Is none other than your daughter, Adelina. The room fell silent. Richard's face drained of color. Jake looked as though he'd been struck dumb. The others gawked at me like he'd just sprouted a second head. But Adelina's reaction was the most intriguing. Her face went pale, her body rigid. And then, she broke the silence. No, she cried, her voice trembling with frustration. This can't be. I narrowed my eyes. What did you just say? She lifted her gaze to mine, her hazel eyes blazing with defiance. I don't feel anything when I'm near you. Your scent is indifferent to me. My wolf doesn't recognize you as my mate. Her words stung more than they should have. You'll understand everything when you come closer. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Masking my irritation with calm authority. What for? Her voice tinged with fear. Be careful, Adelina. I warned. This is the second time you've questioned me. I won't be so forgiving the next time. Please. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Forgive my daughter, Richard interjected hastily. She's confused and overwhelmed. None of us expected such news. Confused. Overwhelmed. I repeated, my voice a low growl. She should be honored. You all should. She acts like Ali sentenced her to death. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. We are honored, Richard exclaimed. A misunderstanding, I assure you. I turned my attention back to Adelina. Come here and take my hand. I won't repeat myself. She hesitated, her steps slow and uncertain as she approached me. When I grabbed her hand, the moment our skin touched, sparks ignited across my body. The sensation was electric, undeniable. Her scent consumed me, filling every corner of my mind. Drive AKO surged forward, seizing control. He pulled her into a fierce embrace and kissed her deeply. A possessive claim. You are my mate. His voice filled with raw emotion. I've finally found you. Tomorrow morning, you're leaving with me. Prepare yourself, my little dove. Adelina SBOV. Oh, goddess, what am I going to do? Maximus is my mate. The sparks where he touched me, the overwhelming pull of his scent, and the way my wolf purred with joy confirmed what had been so desperate to deny. My heart fluttered against my will, and butterflies erupted in my stomach. But the man himself, no. His arrogance and cruelty were unbearable. How could I spend the rest of my life with someone like him? A man who clearly couldn't love anyone but himself. I had to think beyond myself. Rejecting him would devastate my pack. Maximus wasn't just a powerful alpha, he was the future king. A rejection would bring ruin to Crescent Moon Pack, and I couldn't let that happen. But how could I promise myself to him? How could I tie my life to someone I couldn't stand to be near for more than a moment? Tears blurred my vision as I fled the office. I didn't stop running until I was deep in the woods, far from his suffocating and arrogant behavior. I collapsed against a tree, my breath hitching, my wolf whimpered in my mind. Conflicted. She adored him, but I couldn't. Why, goddess? I whispered, my voice breaking. Why him? The forest was silent. offering no answers. Chapter 3 Alone with the Tempered Alpha Adelina SBOV. The next morning came far too quickly. It spent the entire night tossing and turning, unable to silence the storm of thoughts racing through my mind. When the sun finally rose, I felt a suffocating numbness, like I was paralyzed. The weight of the inevitable crushed me. I didn't want to leave my pack, my home, my life. I had projects lined up, plans that could reshape our future, my future. The economic strategy I'd worked tirelessly on was finally ready to be implemented. I wanted to see it through. I wanted to celebrate the results with my friends, my family. This was my world, and I loved it. I didn't want to give it up, but none of that mattered anymore. In a few short hours, this life would be gone. Everything I had built, every connection I held dear, would be relegated to the past, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I had no choice but to accept my fate. Whining wouldn't change anything. I had to adapt, had to find a way to face this new life. Maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. Maximus was completely heartless. Yesterday, he'd been surprisingly demonstrative. The way he hugged me, kissed me, it felt genuine, as if he truly believed in the mate bond. That Stella was right. Maybe this would work out after all. Maybe I just needed to try, to have faith. Everything would be fine. Right. A sharp knock on the door shattered my fragile train of thought. "Come in," I called out, trying to steady my voice. The door creaked open, and Lena, one of the Omega girls who cleaned my room, stepped inside. Her nervous demeanor was immediately apparent, her hands twisted in front of her, and she looked everywhere but at me. "Lena," I prompted gently. She took a deep breath, finally gathering enough courage to speak. "Good morning, miss," she said hesitantly. "I've been sent to inform you. Alpha Maximus is waiting for you at the parking lot. You're leaving in 20 minutes. My heart sank. 20 minutes. I repeated, incredulous. "I thought we were leaving closer to noon. Why the rush?" "I'm sorry, miss," Lena said softly, her eyes downcast. "I'm only delivering the message." I exhaled, pinching the bridge of my nose. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Maximus would do this. Everything had to be on his terms. He controlled the timeline, the pace, my future. "Thank you, Lena," I said at last, my voice steadier than I expected. "Please let Alpha Maximus know it'll be ready. And could you bring someone to help with my luggage?" Lena nodded quickly. "Yes, miss. Right away." As the door closed behind her, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. My heart ached, and my mind felt like it was caught in a whirlwind. This is it, I thought. Time to leave everything behind. With a deep breath, I stood and began to prepare for the next chapter of my life. I don't remember much of what happened next. Everything passed in a blur: the hurried packing of my belongings, the rushed farewells to my family and friends, the awkward silence as I climbed into the car. And now, here I am, sitting in the passenger seat of Maximus' car, with nothing but the sound of tires on asphalt and the steady hum of the engine. Maximus hadn't said much since we left. His demeanor was cold, distant, and his silence felt heavy. It was a stark contrast to the man who had, just the day before, kissed me as if I were the center of his world. Now, he seemed like a stranger. I tried to break the silence, desperate for some kind of communication, but the tension was suffocating. "How much longer?" I asked after hours of awkward silence, my voice barely above a whisper. "What?" Maximus asked, his tone sharp, like my question had broken his concentration. "How much longer until we arrive at your pack?" I clarified, trying to ignore the discomfort curling in my stomach. "We have about 4 more hours of continuous driving." Still sounding distant, almost bored. "But we'll stop midway." "Why will we stop?" the need for some connection urging me to keep the conversation going. "I never travel through the night," he answered curtly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Oh, I see," I mumbled, feeling embarrassed for having asked in the first place. His attitude was so different from the warm fate she'd shown yesterday. I wondered if it was just how he was or if I was somehow the cause of this sudden change. Either way, the car felt unbearably small, and the silence was oppressive. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the motel, a typical roadside stop in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place where you wouldn't expect to find anything but tired travelers, all wolves making their way through the vast wilderness between packs. There was something unnervingly familiar about it, a sense of isolation. The place felt cut off from the world, and that was exactly the point. Humans didn't even know it existed. Maximus guards had already taken care of everything, checking us in and ensuring the room was ready. However, due to a festival happening in a nearby town, the motel was filled with travelers. That left us with no choice but to share the same room. I was startled when I realized this. I had only just met Maximus. Sure, he was my mate, but this felt too soon, too intimate. I shifted uncomfortably in the back of the car as we pulled up to the building. The thought of being in close quarters with him for the night made my stomach twist. I barely knew him, and already, I was expected to share a space with him. I followed him silently into the motel lobby, but my mind was reeling. What if I cowed in sleep? What if he said something or did something that made everything even more awkward? I wasn't ready for this. As we made our way down the hallway, I couldn't help but glance at him out of the corner of my eye. The coldness in his expression hadn't changed. He walked ahead of me, his broad shoulders stiff, his movements tense. It was as if he were shutting me out, and that only made me feel more uncomfortable. We reached the room, and Maximus unlocked the door, stepping aside to let me enter first. The room was modest, with simple furnishings and a large bed. My heart raced, but I refused to let my anxiety show. I quickly turned to face him. "Are you sure we have to share the same room?" Trying to sound casual, though my voice trembled slightly. Maximus didn't respond immediately. He just stood there, his eyes fixed on the bed. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice a little softer than before. "We don't have a choice, Adelina. There are no other rooms, and this is the safest option. I don't trust anyone else, especially with you here." His gaze shifted to meet mine, and there was something in his eyes, something that almost seemed apologetic, but it quickly disappeared, replaced with that same coldness. I looked around, exploring the place, when Maximus's cold voice interrupted my train of thought. "You'll sleep on the couch. You take the bed," he said coldly, and then he left the room without another word. I nodded to myself, heading to the bathroom. After hours of travel, a warm bath was exactly what I needed to relax. And some food too, because right now, I was starving. I hoped Maximus would eat as well, or it was going to be a very difficult night for me. After several minutes of pampering myself in the bathroom, I stepped out, wrapped in a towel. I'd forgotten to grab my clothes, something I always did back home. I preferred to get dressed in my bedroom, away from the steam and moisture of the bathroom. I really hated soaking my clothes. When I stepped back into the room, I saw Maximus sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for me with a couple of burgers. His gaze immediately swept over me, lust darkening his eyes as they turned black. His wolf was in control now. Instinctively tightening my grip on the towel, I didn't want to provoke him any further, if that was even possible. "Nonsense," my wolf scolded. "It's just our mate. From now on, we're going to share more than just a room with him," she commented playfully. "Please, girl, don't be so horny," I replied, trying to regain my composure. I knew that when a wolf takes over, the marking would let be avoided, and of course I did not want that. At least, not now. It is too early for me to be marked, and especially in a hotel room. I always imagined being marked in a nice and romantic place, I immediately looked down, avoiding eye contact with him while he kept staring at me lustfully, making me feel vulnerable. He stood up and walked toward me, his eyes never leaving mine as the distance between us closed with every step. When he was only a few centimeters away, his hands settled on my arms, and he leaned toward me. When he touched me, butterflies exploded in my stomach and sparks danced through my body. It was everything I had expected from our bond, but there was more. I couldn't explain it, but when he was around, it was as if he had a way of shaping my emotions, my desires, and my thoughts. Though I had known him for only a few hours, I felt an overwhelming connection to him. I wanted to be near him, to touch him, to hold him, to speak words of love and to do everything lovers do. But how could I feel this way? I barely knew him, and I certainly didn't like him. I closed my eyes, leaning into him, trembling with anticipation, waiting for the kiss. But instead, I heard him clear his throat, making me open my eyes. The moment I did, I saw the disapproval in his gaze. He turned away abruptly, leaving me standing there, feeling foolish. Why had he done that? Do you always behave like this? His voice harsh as he sat on the bed. His body was stiff, his expression cold and distant. What do you mean? Completely puzzled. If anyone should be scolded, it definitely was me. Do you always act so provocative when a man is around? His tone was strict, and his eyes bore into mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. What? I was offended. Was he seriously insinuating that I'd stepped out of the bathroom in nothing but a towel to provoke him? Who did he think I was? Don't play innocent with me. He shot back venomous lie. It's obvious that you came out like this to provoke me. I didn't. I stammered, trying to defend myself, but he cut me off before I could say another word. Stop trying to look innocent. Put something on and come eat if you don't want your food to get cold. He ordered coldly now. I was going to let him get away with such an accusation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself before responding, my voice low but firm. Let's get something straight. I didn't come out to provoke you. I simply forgot my clothes. I don't need this kind of treatment. His gaze turned colder, his jaw tightening at my words. I was going to back down now. Not after everything he said. His sudden shift in attitude had taken me by surprise, and I refused to let him walk all over me. Besides, I didn't expect you to be here, I added, my voice biting as I crossed my arms. He looked at me for a moment, as if weighing whether or not to respond, before finally speaking in a low, controlled tone. Well, now you know. This is my room too. You can't assume he'll be gone. I stood my ground, my chest rising and falling with the tension in the room. I didn't ask for any of this. I'm not here to cater to your assumptions. Maximus's eyes softened for a split second, but he quickly masked it with an impassive expression. The silence between us thickened, the weight of his gaze still heavy on me, as if he was trying to figure me out. Please spare me from your pathetic excuses. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylen Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. End of discussion. Go get dressed, he commanded firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. I couldn't stop myself from snapping back. I have the right to defend myself. I don't want to give you the wrong impression of me. Maximus's gaze hardened, his jaw clenching as he stood tall in front of me. If I were you, I wouldn't worry so much about it. Now come and eat before it gets cold. His words stung, but in a way, they made me pause. Was I overthinking things? Maybe he was right. A mate shouldn't think badly of you for something as simple as this. Maybe I was making a mountain out of a molehill, trying to push the discomfort aside. I guess you're right, I muttered, resigning myself to the moment. With a hesitant glance, I turned to grab my clothes. Maximus had already moved toward the bed, the burgers sitting there, seemingly untouched, waiting for us to settle it into whatever strange dynamic this new chapter would hold. Inside the bathroom, I leaned against the counter, trying to steady my racing heart. What had just happened? One moment, I was imagining a tender moment with him, and the next, he was accusing me of trying to provoke him. I was some object for him to control, but part of me couldn't help but feel confused. The way Hed looked at me, it had felt too intense, too intimate, and yet, there was a part of me that couldn't ignore the pull between us. After a few moments of calming myself, I changed quickly, trying to block out my swirling thoughts. I needed to regain my composure. When I stepped out of the bathroom, I found Maximus sitting at the edge of the bed, his back to me. He was already eating a burger, though his posture suggested he was still in a tense mood. I had half expected him to say something else, maybe even apologize for his outburst. But instead, there was just silence. I walked over to the small table where he had placed the burgers, the air thick between us. My stomach growled with hunger, but I couldn't help but feel the distance that still stretched between us. I wanted to break through that wall, to understand him more, but I was sure how. "I'm sorry about earlier," I said quietly, my voice a little softer than I intended. He didn't look up, his focus on his food as he chewed slowly. "Don't apologize. I'm not in the mood for it." I bit my lip and sat down opposite him, not knowing what else to say. My own hunger took over, and I grabbed one of the burgers, trying to keep my thoughts from drifting back to how close we had almost come to kissing earlier. I didn't want to dwell on that. Not now. Not until we figured out what was going on between us. We ate in silence for a while, and it seemed like the tension between us had settled into something more manageable, though it was still there. Maximus didn't make a move to close the distance between us. He kept his eyes down, focused on the food as if it was the only thing that mattered in that moment. Eventually, I spoke again. "So do you always get like this?" Hoping to shift the conversation into less tense territory, his gaze flickered to me for a moment, his eyes hard but calculating. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you seem to be constantly on edge." "I don't know. Maybe it's the whole alpha thing, but it's like I can't equilibrate anything right around you." There was a long pause, but he didn't seem surprised by my question. He looked at me with something akin to frustration. "Being an alpha isn't easy. You have no idea what's at stake. I can't afford to be distracted, especially by things like this." "By things like what?" Raising an eyebrow, unsure of where this was going. "By relationships. By you." His voice clipped, though there was an undercurrent of something softer. "I don't have time for things I can't control." I wanted to push him, to ask more questions, but something about his words made me hesitate. He sounded so closed off, so distant, and yet, beneath that, I could feel there was more, something that made me want to keep trying to understand him, even if he kept pushing me away. "I'm not trying to control you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." My tone more gentle now. "I'm just trying to get through this without making things worse." But him not used to this. He met my gaze then, his eyes unreadable for a moment, before he stood up and walked toward the small desk by the window, as if considering something, then turned to face me again. "We leave early tomorrow. Get some rest. You'll need it." I didn't respond right away. I couldn't help but feel like there was something more he was saying. But in that moment, it was clear he was done talking. Maximus was a man of few words, and when he chose to close himself off, there was nothing I could do to force him to open up. I finished my burger in silence, my thoughts racing, trying to process everything that had happened in such a short time. Maybe tomorrow things would be different, but for tonight, it seemed like the only thing I could do was accept the strange, tense silence and prepare for whatever came next. Chapter 4 Rules Adelina SPOV. Hours passed quickly as we traveled by car. And before I knew it, we had arrived in Maxim's territory. A whirlwind of emotions swirled within me, joy and sorrow, fear and hope all intertwined, filling my heart at once. Would I find happiness here? Would the relationship between us work? 1,000 questions about my future consumed my mind. I was so absorbed by thoughts of what my life would be like from now on that I didn't even notice we had arrived at the drive, aka Pact's headquarters. We parked outside a grand house, or perhaps I should call it a royal palace. The estate was enormous, with sprawling Babylonian gardens, a pool, large garages, tennis courts, a football field, and a basketball court, just to name a few. Maximus immediately stepped out of the car without waiting for me, while I remained in place, mesmerized by the beauty of it all. He didn't even glance back at me, which left me unsettled. Maybe HE's just busy. My wolf spoke up in my mind. HE's been away for so long. There must be a lot for him to catch up on. Perhaps you're right, I replied, trying to calm my nerves. Maybe I'm overthinking things. I finally stepped out of the car and followed Omega, who had come to open the door and guide me inside. As soon as I entered, I was taken aback by the view. The room was filled with modern, stylish furniture and elegant decor. In front of me stood a grand iron staircase leading up to the other 2 floors. Given the opulence surrounding me, I couldn't help but believe this must be Maximus' home. I stood in the room for several minutes, unsure of where to go or what to do, when an Omega kindly offered to give me a tour. Since Maximus had already disappeared into one of the many rooms, I gratefully accepted the offer. As we wandered through the building, I soon realized that this wasn't Maximus' private home, it was the Pact house. The ground floor housed the whole, an entertainment room with numerous games, a restaurant. To my agent extraordinaire, Madame Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A cinema room, and a gym. On the first floor, the offices of the Alpha and Gamma, while the second floor contained their bedrooms. There were also rooms for some Pact members who lived here, mostly single wolves who hadn't found their mates yet or had lost them. The married wolves lived in houses scattered throughout the land. Although the tour occupied much of my day, my mind remained preoccupied with Maximus' strange behavior. Why had he treated me so distantly? And why had he brought me here instead of his own home? Normally, when an alpha finds his mate, he brings her to house, not to the Pact house. Maybe we'll go to his house later, my wolf suggested. He must have a lot of work to do, especially as alpha and future king of all werewolves. I hope you're right, I responded, my voice tinged with sadness. The situation didn't feel right. Deep down, something inside me warned that things might not be as good as I had hoped. I was resting in one of the living rooms when the Omega who had guided me earlier left to assist in the kitchen. My thoughts were interrupted when a security guard approached and asked me to follow him. We climbed a few stairs, and upon reaching the first floor, we stopped in front of a set of double doors. He knocked and gestured for me to enter. It was then that I realized this was Maximus' office. Maximus sat behind a large mahogany desk, and the office itself was fit for a king. Behind him, a window offered a view of the training grounds and the dense forest beyond. To the left, there was an expansive library filled with all sorts of books. It was truly remarkable. I've always loved books, and I think I know where I'll be spending most of my time from now on. As I mentally planned my daily routine, Maximus cleared his throat, snapping me back to the present. His piercing grey eyes locked onto mine, filled with an unmistakable anger. I froze in place. I didn't understand how, but he always managed to unsettle me, affecting my emotions, my entire composure without my being able to stop it. I hated feeling so vulnerable around him. Sit, he commanded, his tone flattened emotionless. Thank you, I replied, taking a seat in one of the chairs in front of his desk. He stared at me, his gaze stern and unreadable. I wasn't sure whether he was surprised by my response or offended, perhaps both. He closed the file in front of him, his gaze still fixed on mine. Before speaking again, I called you here to inform you of the rules you must follow from now on as a member of my pack. Okay, I managed to say, my voice small. As you know, every pack has its rules. So does mine. We follow them reverently and without exception. There will be no exceptions for you. I don't wish for any exceptions, I said firmly. But before you start with the rules, may I ask you a question? Although I don't appreciate interruptions. Go ahead, he replied curtly. Make it brief. His tone discouraged me, but I pushed through and asked anyway. I was wondering when I can go home, freshen up and get some rest. I'm really tired from the trip. I don't understand your question. His voice called. This is your home now. You won't be returning to your old pack, if that's what you mean. No. You misunderstood me. I quickly corrected. I'm not talking about my old pack's home, but my new one. I know you're busy, but I would really appreciate some rest in my bedroom, if I may. And who's stopping you? He replied, almost as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You don't need permission to go to your bedroom. I know that. But how do I get there? I don't know where your house is. That's completely irrelevant, he responded dismissively. Why would you need to know the location of my house? Because I want to go there to rest. You know. What is wrong with him? You don't need to go anywhere. You're already home. From now on, this is where you live. I blinked, confused. I thought alphas live separately from the pack when they find their lunas. You misunderstood. His tone sharp. You'll be living here. They'll continue living in my house as always. But aren't we supposed to live together? You know, like all mates do. He deliberately ignored my question and continued speaking as though no further explanation was necessary. The rules are as follows. 1. You must spend most of your day in your room. You are not allowed to wander around like a tourist. Meals will be served in the dining room, and if you need anything, you'll ask one of the Omgazer to bring it to you. You must obey your superiors. Any disobedience will be punished. You must always address me as Alpha, never by my first name, under any circumstances. You are not permitted to leave the pack's premises without permission. And last but not least, you must not tell anyone that you are my mate. I stared at him in disbelief. You know, this is really not the time for jokes. I'm exhausted. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Confused. I never joke about pack matters, he replied coldly. If you have no further questions, you are free to leave, but wait a minute. I stammered, completely at a loss for words. What was happening? It felt as though the ground had just been ripped from beneath me. If you have any more questions, our beta will be glad to answer them and explain the procedures followed here, Maximus said, his tone imposing. You are dismissed now. I left his office, my head down, overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. Confusion and sadness gripped me. Why was he acting this way? What was wrong? This was absurd. Why didn't he want anyone to know we were mates? Why bring me here if he didn't want me? Was I just supposed to be confined to a room in the pack house? Maybe HS afraid. My wolf mused. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Afraid of what? I wondered aloud. Afraid that someone might hurt you. This is new for him too. You may not know how to handle the situation. I don't know. I don't believe that. Achi is so powerful and composed. Of course, he's powerful, but he has one weakness. One weakness. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You're his weakness. Adelina. Oh, don't worry about the small things. I can feel it, his wolf definitely wants us. I really hope you're right, and that everything works out in the end. I hope I made the right choice by coming here. Chapter 5 Imprisoned at Maximus BOV. I can't believe this woman is my mate. I muttered to myself. She's so weak, so pathetic. She didn't even try to defend herself. How could she possibly be the Luna of my pack? She's completely unsuitable for the role. You're overreacting. My wolf. Dive AKO. Don't underestimate her. I can feel her wolf chest strong. Yeah. Whatever. I snapped. You can't convince me with just a feeling when the facts show the opposite. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. The door opened, and the familiar, seductive scent of Gina filled the room. She stepped inside, wearing a tight black dress that clung to her body and accentuated her every curve. She was beautiful, and undeniably strong, one of the most powerful wolves in my pack. That was the kind of woman my Luna should be, not someone like Adelina, who couldn't even stand up for herself. Sure, she's capable, but a gold digger. Drive AKO chimed in, his voice dripping with disdain. You forgot to mention that she's the most self-serving wolf in the pack. I ignored him. As usual, I wasn't about to let Drive AKO spoil things for me. For days I had been traveling without any opportunity for enjoyment. Yes, it'd been with other women along the way, but with the revelation of my mate in the last pack, it had been impossible to have fun without drawing attention and making a fool of myself. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilgan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing Kishut's enthusiasm. I would soon be their king. Gina approached me with her usual confident allure, leaned in close, and whispered in my ear, "Baby, where have you been?" Her voice dripping with a mix of desire and frustration. "You didn't even greet me when you came in. I've missed you." She moved closer, her eyes locked onto mine, filled with an unspoken invitation. I couldn't deny her presence had an effect on me. She was always able to captivate me, her confidence and allure impossible to ignore. But in that moment, as she leaned in, a thought lingered at the back of my mind. There was something unsettling about it all. I had my mate now, and the distance between me and Gina suddenly felt more pronounced. It was something I had expected to feel, but there it was. Adelina's POV. After the guards escorted me to my room, I sat on my bed, completely stunned. What had just happened? Why had he been so harsh with me? I couldn't understand it. I needed to go back and confront him. I had to sort things out. He couldn't just treat me like this, not after everything. Alpha or not, I didn't care. Fueled by anger and confusion, I left my room and made my way towards Maximus' office, my steps determined. But as I neared the door, an unsettling feeling washed over me. It wasn't fear of his reaction, it was something deeper. An instinct that warned me that something was about to happen. Something that would shake me to my core. I couldn't explain it, but I knew. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced my chest. I gasped but shook it off, refusing to let it stop me. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. I heard strange sounds coming from inside. Moaning. My heart raced, but I pushed the doubt aside and entered without a second thought. The sight I walked into left me frozen in place. Maximus was with another woman at all. Slender redhead. They were entwined. Their intimacy so raw and unapologetic that it stole my breath. When Maximus saw me standing there, he let out a growl and shouted for me to leave, his voice thick with anger. Although Maximus' harsh reaction made my knees weak, I stood my ground, my anger flaring. Enough was enough. It wasn't just the way he had treated me earlier, it was this. I had caught him in the act of betrayal, and then he dared to shout at me, ordering me out. No, I wasn't going anywhere. Not anymore. He had crossed a line I didn't even think he could see. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Maximus growled, his voice laced with fury, but I was trying my best to hold it together, to make sense of the mess that had just unfolded. Who is that? Baby. The red-haired woman sneered at me, her venomous gaze cutting through me as she spoke. I'm his mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilgan. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing Kishut's enthusiasm. My voice steady with an unexpected pride, despite the emotional storm inside me. And who are you? She scoffed, clearly unimpressed. You're his mate, Shima. This short, worthless woman This minion is your mate. Don't make me laugh. She isn't even pretty. The insult stung, but I kept my chin high. Max's silence, however, spoke volumes. I could feel my heart sinking as she continued to tear me down. Get out, Maximus bellowed, his words slicing through the tension in the room. I couldn't believe it. He was asking me to leave. After everything, he let this woman insult me. And he stood there, not even defending me. Was this how he truly saw me? Did I even matter to him? Are you telling me to get out while this woman insults me like this? My voice shaking with disbelief. Get out, Maximus repeated menacingly, his tone colder than ever. No, I won't. Until you tell me who this woman is. I demand an explanation. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Crossing my arms defiantly, the red-haired woman, clearly as unclearly enjoying the spectacle, interjected with a smirk. In his only love and the future Luna of this pack. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Didn't you get the news? What? I gasped. How is that possible? I'm his mate. I will be the Luna of this pack. My voice was filled with shock and confusion. Maximus glanced at the woman for a moment before speaking, his calm demeanor an unsettling contrast to the anger that was rising inside me. Gina, please leave us alone. I have some things to discuss with this woman. As she walked out, she turned to me with a final smirk. Okay, love, but do me a favor. Teach that bitch a lesson for disrespecting us. She leaned in for a lingering kiss that made my stomach churn, before lifting her skirt and leaving the office in a confident stride. Completely undeterred by the situation, I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Despite everything, I refused to let Maximus' yelling or Gina's degrading behavior break me. I approached the conversation with as much calmness as I could muster. Maximus, what's going on? Can you please explain? My voice was steady, though inside I was trembling. I knew it might seem foolish to be polite under these circumstances, but it was how I was raised, always be polite, no matter the situation. Unfortunately, Maximus didn't seem to share the same sentiment. His glare was like a physical blow, and without warning, he began to shout, his control slipping completely. It's alpha to you, and I don't owe you any explanations. I already gave you the rules of this pack. Your disrespect to them will not be tolerated. How dare you show up in my office like this and demand anything from me? Who do you think you are? His voice was loud and cold, each word like a lash. I'll tell you exactly what you are. You are nothing. Your demands mean nothing to me. How dare you act this way? How dare you disobey me? He was visibly shaking with anger now, and I could see that he was no longer in control of his emotions. Your bad behavior will be punished. You need to learn your place. They'll teach you that lesson right now. Guards. At his command, two large men entered the office, bowing respectfully before Maximus. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier, and I felt my heart race in my chest. I didn't know what would happen next, but I couldn't back down. Take her to the dungeons, Maximus commanded, his voice like stone. What? In being in prison while you were caught cheating on me? To my agent extraordinaire, mythical. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Are you serious? My voice filled with disbelief and fury. I tried to protest, but no one was listening. The guards merely tightened their grip on my arms, dragging me toward the exit with no regard for my struggle. Down we went, deep into the heart of the pack's stronghold. The air grew thicker with each step, carrying the stench of decayed dampness, blood, old, and rot. It was clear this place hadn't been cleaned in years. My stomach churned, but I kept my head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. They shoved me into a cold, dark cell, the door slamming shut with a finality that sent a jolt through me. The sound echoed in my ears, sinking into the pit of my stomach. The cell was a nightmare. To my agent extraordinaire, Moonlit, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Grey blanket covered a thin straw bed that reeked of mildew. The bars were silver, designed to keep us in, to keep us contained like animals. I realized bitterly. I could see the sky above, a small barred window giving a glimpse of the stars. But it felt like a cruel reminder of what I could never reach. A filthy toilet sat in the corner, the room's putrid smell making my stomach turn in more. I couldn't understand how everything had come to this. This was my first time in a prison, my first time experiencing such cruelty, and I couldn't help but feel a burning sense of injustice. I had done nothing wrong, and yet here I was, locked away like a criminal. It felt like my whole world was crumbling. Rage boiled inside me, and I started kicking and punching anything I could. The bars. To my agent extraordinaire, Moonlit, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The bed. Anything to vent my frustration, my helplessness. But it didn't stop the pain, it didn't stop the feeling of being small, being disposable. Eventually, the anger drained from me, leaving behind a crushing emptiness. My body slunk to the ground, and I hugged my knees to my chest, unable to hold back the tears any longer. The cold seeped into my skin, but it was nothing compared to the cold that had settled in my heart. I had been betrayed not just by Maximus, but by everything I thought I knew. My dreams of belonging, of being with someone who cared for me, felt like lies now. Tears streaked down my face as the weight of everything crashed down on me. I hadn't just been locked in a cell, it'd been locked out of a future, out of hope. And that was the most painful thing of all. Where did I get myself into? This can't be happening. Mates aren't supposed to act like this. What is his problem? What did I do wrong? Oh my goddess. Please let this all be a nightmare. I thought desperately, clutching my knees tighter to my chest, hoping to wake up from this horrible reality. The hours dragged by in unbearable silence, with only the distant sounds of the Pact's daily activities breaking the stillness. I lay there, my mind spinning in endless circles. The isolation was suffocating. How could Maximus, my supposed mate, treat me like this? He didn't even care enough to explain himself. I didn't deserve this. The following morning, a guard finally came, tossing a hunk of dry bread and a bottle of water into my cell. My stomach growled, reminding me of the hunger and sigh I had been ignoring, but I couldn't bring myself to eat away. The food seemed so insignificant compared to the storm inside me. Still, my body won out. I ate, though every bite tasted bitter, knowing that I was nothing more than an afterthought to the man who should have cared for me. The night descended cold and unrelenting, but the chill in the air was nothing compared to the coldness that had settled deep in my heart. My wolf, ever faithful, tried to wrap me in warmth, but it wasn't enough. My heart felt frozen, weighed down by the confusion and betrayal that gnawed at me. For the first time in my life, I felt so utterly helpless, so abandoned. How could I have been so wrong about him? How could he have turned out to be someone who treated me like this? I felt like I was caught in a tug of war inside myself. One part of me wanted to fight against him, fight against the woman who had dared to mock me, fight for my place and my dignity. But another part of me felt completely incompetent, like I wasn't strong enough, like I didn't even deserve to fight back. Would I ever get the chance to prove myself? Would he ever see me as more than the insignificant person he seemed to believe I was? Tears gathered in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I was going to let him have that power over me. Yet no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped in a life that wasn't mine, in a future I could barely recognize.